Kept you waiting, huh?
Hello everyone, this is Seskinator11, and this is my Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways On-Site Procurement No Damage Run, and this is Chapter 1. So the first thing you're going to notice here, folks, is that there is no difficulty settings for Separate Ways. There's only one set difficulty. So there was no professional setting, there was no easy setting, there was none of that. So you have to play on one particular difficulty. Unlike the main game, where you play as Leon, and you can set it to professional, which is the highest difficulty in that game. So, what you'll see here, folks, is that I'm following the same specifications as I did in Leon's campaign, where I'm not going to use the shop to buy any weapons, or ammo, or healing items, because this is a no-damage run. And the reason why I do that, folks, is because I wanted to provide a little bit of extra challenge and make it a little bit interesting. Because doing something like that can really push you out of your comfort zone, and it allows you to improvise and use mechanics of a game that maybe you didn't think to use before. One of these mechanics being is the knife. Ada's knife, although it doesn't have as much reach as Leon, is still very powerful, as you can see. So what you're seeing here, folks, is that you're seeing the common door strat, where if you shoot a hole through the door and you wait here, you're basically invincible to any of the attacks that the enemies do, such as axe throws, such as anything they can use to stab you, because you're basically stun locking them into this door. And they can't reach you. This piece of geometry that the door is preventing them from attacking you, so you're effectively safe, which is pretty nice. So that's what I'm using here, just to kill a lot of enemies, and you have to kill a certain amount in order to progress further. Because what you'll see coming up is that a hen will fly off the rooftop and leave a key to go on to the next area of the game. But yeah, folks, these challenge runs that I've been doing recently, I mean, the one just before this was the God of War 2018 Valkyrie's no damage run on Give Me God of War difficulty. And that was just a little challenge I wanted to throw out because, honestly, right now, I've been revisiting old games because the new games that have been coming out recently have been pretty shit. So, I'm trying to entertain myself, especially, as the pandemic continues to loom on, and now there's variants, apparently, of the coronavirus. So, who knows when it'll be safe. However, the vaccine is proving to be pretty effective, which is, I guess, a little bit of hope on the horizon. But we'll have to see. I mean, maybe coronavirus will be something that is constant, and is just a never-ending season. Maybe it'll end, but I'm betting on it being a never-ending season, and eventually, at least hopefully, we'll get some sort of horde. I'm looking at zombies and thinking zombie horde. Herd immunity. But yeah, it'll take a little bit of time to get there. But otherwise, I'm just entertaining myself, with my hobbies, and that includes doing no damage runs. But anyway, folks, here's me organizing my inventory because I finally reached a save point. You'll notice that Ada's chapters are still relatively short, as opposed to the main campaign. There are 5 chapters in total, and I want to say that the first 3 chapters are still very straightforward. There's not too much of a challenge because you're provided with all the tools that you need, especially when you're just wielding Ada's handgun and her shotgun. And by the way, you can see me just holding out my knife, and the reason for that, folks, is because I completely had a mind fart and I forgot how to slash. I was hitting L1 instead of R1 instead of R2 on the controller. For whatever reason, I thought R1 was the button to slash, so I thought my controller was defective, and I was just holding it out, holding Ada's knife out, and cursing under my breath the entire time. But luckily that wasn't the case. It was just me making a really stupid mistake, as I tend to do most times in video games. But yeah, And just like Leon's campaign, there's going to be snakes inside some of the boxes, so be sure to do a secondary slash. Although, I think because the game is in 60 frames per second, the first slash allows you to kill some of the snakes sometimes instantaneously in the boxes. So that can be a plus at least. The only time that you're going to see me visiting the merchant is if I'm going to sell some items to clear up my inventory space. Because you can upgrade your suitcase inventory space from the merchant as well, especially when you pay for more weapons. Like the bow that Ada gets. The bow is pretty sick. It's a really cool weapon. My only gripe with it is that it fires very slowly. But it does a pretty good amount of damage, and it's very good for crowd control. But again, you won't be seeing me use that, because that's the specifications for this particular run. But yeah, folks, you'll see me using a lot of very safe strats, because again, this is a no damage run, and some of the checkpoints can be really bad in this game, in this particular segment at least. Not in Chapter 1, but there's one coming up in Chapter 4 that really made me upset, and also Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is where you face as Seraphim 17 calls them, the Mr. T's with miniguns. But yeah, those are the worst enemies in the game in my opinion, because they, again, fire bullets, as opposed to just attacking you like zombies do in a zombie game. But anyway, I would never think to do some sort of challenge run like this if it weren't for the community I was a part of, consisting of Seraphim 17's community and the Godfather Dictators community. I just never had the confidence to even play on higher difficulties when I was growing up. I was deathly terrified of them. I never thought to do something like that, and I think part of the reason was I was afraid of failing, honestly. I was afraid of constantly getting that game over screen, that continue screen, and that made me feel insignificant. And when you play video games as a child, generally you want to feel powerful. You want to feel invincible. You want to feel like you can do things that you can't do in real life. So that was my mindset back then growing up. But now, since I've been playing video games for so many years, you've got to make them a little bit more exciting these days. Especially since current video games really hold your hand the entire way through and don't allow you to have a challenge, because they want to be more accessible for most people, and a lot of people who play them casually, they want to be able to see the end of the story, when back then, video games wouldn't allow you to do that unless you actually learned something, unless you actually had the skills to overcome the challenge to proceed, which is a very interesting concept. So, going back, yes, I was scared of higher difficulties, scared of doing any sort of challenge run such as this, where I, go for it no damage, or only use the base game weapons that are given to me. And yeah, it's just a great experience, folks. It's a unique experience. It can be very challenging at times, it makes you want to pull your hair out at times, but you come out the other end feeling better, feeling more confident about yourself, feeling like you're a very skilled player. And some folks may not get to experience that. And some folks feel like they're an experienced player when they just play the game normally, which is totally fine. Again, doing something like this is completely optional. I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody. I'm not saying that people are terrible. All I'm saying is that if you want to revisit a game, if you want to play it again, throw an extra challenge in there. Do something to make it a little bit more exciting for yourself, and that just increases the replay value of it, especially for a game such as Resident Evil 4, which is definitely up there in my top favorite games of all time. So that's the reason for me going back to this game and playing separate ways, because I feel like I just can't get enough of this game, and especially with RE8 coming out around the corner, RE Village or whatever the heck it's called. Where I'm calling it now, folks. Chris is definitely going to turn into a werewolf. He already looks pretty rugged in that trailer, but I'm calling it now. I bet you he's going to turn into a werewolf and get werewolf powers, and they're going to pull a whole Resistance 2, like with Nathan Hale and him turning into one of the Chimera. But who knows? I feel like people would revolt if that happened. But anyways, I'm just not surprised with what they're trying to do with games these days to make them interesting, and the story that they end up ruining. But oh well, it is what it is, right? But anyway, you're seeing me now. We're in the church area. Our objective here is to ring the bell so that way we can save Leon in the very first big sequence in RE4, where you're in the village and you face the chainsaw guy. And it's really interesting how they take different segments in this game and they explain what happens on the sidelines. And that's effectively what Ada is doing. She's helping Leon every single time and trying to help him through despite direct orders from Wesker to kill him. Or kill anybody in her path just to get the virus. So, another thing about this game that I really thought was interesting is Separate Ways didn't exist on the GameCube version, actually. It was only for the versions after that. So the PS2 port, the PC port, and the 6 million ports after that, too. Which, this game is going to be ported to literally every single console. Because nobody can get enough of this game, and Capcom will milk it for what it's worth. As they should, because it's a very good game. But anyway, in the original Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, there was no Separate Ways campaign. And what was interesting as well is that they only had the other mode, Assignment Ada, and she didn't have a knife in that game. So they added the knife accessibility to Ada in the ports afterwards, and of course they added Separate Ways. It's just really interesting though, because the knife is one of the most powerful aspects of this game. It's one of the most powerful mechanics. And for an OSP run, an on-site procurement run, I couldn't see myself prevailing if it weren't for the knife. I mean, especially with the bosses, especially with Sadler coming up later on. And Sadler scares the hell out of me in Separate Ways. Not in the main game. In the main game, he just looks like a big blob of goo, and he looks terrible. And apologies for the noises in the background, folks. My dog is nearby me, and she's shaking herself, and her collar is making a jingling noise. So, I apologize in advance. You're gonna get some doggo action in the background. But anyway, yeah, Sadler terrifies me in this in Separate Ways in the campaign. Because he's in his human form. He's in his human form, and that's what we're familiar with. And there's another snake, by the way, so be sure to do a double slash right away so you don't take damage needlessly on the snake. Because the checkpoint to this area, believe it or not, is back when you crawled up the ladder. Which is a pretty lengthy checkpoint. So be cautious if you're going for a no damage run. So yeah, now we're coming up on the chainsaw lady. I think this is the first chainsaw encounter in the game. Ada's shotgun is still very powerful, and I love the reload sound that it makes. She's got that crank on the side, and it just makes me greygasm every single time she reloads. It's amazing. I can't get enough of a good shotgun in a game if they do it well, especially for survival horror. But yeah, your shotgun is going to be a good crowd control. Later on, is it going to do a lot of damage? Not necessarily, but her handgun is surprisingly very powerful because it's the handgun that you get in Leon's campaign, and it's the latest one. So you can use that to your advantage. But yeah, right now I'm just playing it safe. I'm not going to go up and slash her because she gets up a little bit faster than most other enemies. And I just keep pummeling her with the shotgun, knocking her down to her back until she finally dies and drops the treasure that you're going to place in the device at the back of the cathedral, which I believe is the green cat's eye. So once we pick that up, we're going to be heading back. There's going to be more enemies that spawn in front of the church. I don't think right now, but after you place the treasure inside the device, which is going to be a little puzzle. That is actually the same solution as the puzzle in the main campaign, which I thought was really cool. Because you got to be consistent with those details. It wouldn't really make sense to make this puzzle have a different solution. So that's me looking for treasures, but there's none up there. Instead, there's just a crow, so I'm not going to waste my ammo, and instead I'm going right for the puzzle. The puzzle solution is going to be the backwards S, the M looking symbol, and the V looking symbol, just like the main campaign. And you'll see me struggling a little bit, but eventually I get it done. It's hilarious. But yeah, I'm thinking of doing some future challenge runs coming up. I don't know when I'll start them because there's simply too many games on my backlog right now, especially for PC. But I had quite the terror in the cursed PC build the past year, I would say. Because originally, my first motherboard turned out to be incompatible, which is a mistake on my part, on my research. It was incompatible with the CPU that I bought, which is a very common rookie mistake. So I encourage you to do your research, triple check when you order, because when I ordered my motherboard, one letter was off in the name, and because of that, it turned out to be incompatible. That was the first issue that happened, and that was entirely my fault, and I take full responsibility for that one. The second issue was the motherboard that I got correctly turned out to be faulty. And it didn't show this until about 3 months in. I mean, it was doing some really weird things happening to it, which turned out it would immediately boot to the BIOS as opposed to the desktop, until I reinstalled Windows onto one of my other hard drives, and then it would boot to the desktop and shut down randomly. So that was really frustrating. And that was happening for probably 5 months. And I was trying to replace parts. I ordered new parts just to replace them, like my PSU. I replaced what was it? I took out my GPU, my graphics card. I hooked up to the onboard motherboard graphics, and still the problem would persist. By the way, here's the next checkpoint, folks, right here. So as soon as you defeat those enemies and you open the door, the checkpoint is there. The checkpoint previously is when you crawl up the ladder, like you climb up the ladder from the underground. So it's a very lengthy checkpoint. So be cautious. But yeah, going back to my PC build, that was the next problem that happened. So I had to order a completely new motherboard. So in doing so, I had to get a new CPU because my CPU was simply not new enough. So I got a CPU that was compatible with a new motherboard, and a new motherboard to replace my old motherboard. So it was kind of a nightmare, folks. It took so long, because originally I thought it was my PSU that was the faulty part. The PSU turned out to be just fine. I actually bought a $15 device that allowed me to check the voltage on it, and the voltage was very stable. And then I finally replaced my parts. And knock on wood, I'm looking at my PlayStation and I'm thinking PS4. The PC that I have now is working very well, and there hasn't been any problems ever since. That was until my GPU started to sound like a meat grinder, that is. So, the cursed PC build started occurring yet again, folks. So I had to replace my GPU. Luckily, it was in warranty. I had a 1070 Ti, which is not a new GPU at all. You know, it's been out for a while. It still holds up very well. However, the noise it was making was this rattling noise, and I triple checked to see if it was the fans, if any cords were touching the fans in any way. No, my cord management in my PC tower was very well done, and nothing was touching it. It was coming from within the GPU. And I sent it in because it was under warranty at EVGA, and luckily they were able to replace it, and they actually replaced it with a 2070 GPU, which I'm very pleased with, and it actually runs way better than the 1070 Ti, and I love it. So that was one fortunate thing that came out of all this drama with my PC, and I was able to finally get a functional PC build that actually works. So after nearly a year, probably almost less than a year since I built it, when the quarantine was just happening. So now I finally have a functional PC. I can finally get into my PC backlog, which I have a lot of good games that I have to play, such as Control, such as Doom Eternal, and of course I'm distracted with Destiny 2 and the grind that is Destiny 2, so I haven't been able to get to Control or Doom Eternal. But I'll get to them eventually. I suppose. I just have to make it an effort to do so and play less Destiny 2. But I have been doing a better job lately, folks. I've been playing a game called Darkwood, and one of my friends, Glass Gunslinger, that I actually posted a video of us playing Destiny 2 together on 2 dungeons, the Prophecy Dungeon and the Shattered Throne Dungeon. He was kind enough to gift me that game with the refund that he got from Cyberpunk. He was able to get the game for $5, and he gifted it to me with some of his Cyberpunk refund money that he had left over. So I guess I can thank Cyberpunk in the end, for being such a shit game and not being complete or not having good mechanics and not being a well-polished game. So, but no, Glass was too kind to be able to do that. He could have easily used the money himself to pay for a game. So thank you again, Glass, for doing that, man. Because Darkwood ended up being an amazing game. I love the atmosphere, and I highly recommend people play it. It's been a while since I played a horror game that had good atmosphere and was not just filled with all these jump scares left and right. So definitely play that game, folks. I streamed it for a little bit a few weeks ago, the ending of my first playthrough, and I'm thinking I'm going to go back and play through it again to get the other endings. But yeah, now Ada is completing this puzzle. You'll see that the symbol is upside down, and you'll see me struggling a bit trying to complete it because, well, it's been a while since I've done this puzzle and I haven't memorized it. So you'll see me struggle a bit, which is fine. But once she completes this puzzle, it's going to flip around and be the right side up for Leon when he actually enters, and that will allow him to access Ashley to be able to save her and accompany her throughout the game. So it's all coming together, folks. But once she completes this, she'll be able to ring the bell and save Leon. But yeah, this was a lot of fun doing this. As I said before, I had a lot of fun making the RE4 challenge run as well. And this is only Chapter 1. There's only 4 chapters left to go. So folks, thank you all for watching. I will talk a bit more in the remaining 4 chapters, and I hope you stick around for the rest of this. You guys all, take care now.